There we go.
Have we got anyone watching?
I'm just opening up now. Let's have a look.
We are ready to rock and roll with October's live image critique. I have 20 images that have been submitted by members of our group. And we'll wait and see if there's anybody on. Make sure you guys can hear me before I start.
I see you.
Good morning. If you are watching, let us know where you're tuning in from. We love to know where everyone's watching from, what part of the world you're in. But I can't see, I'm looking at the big TV screen behind the camera. I can't see who is leaving the comments. Good morning from Germany. Hi. It says Facebook user. So if
Olivia and
hi
Shannon.
Olivia. Hi Shannon. Good morning. If you have any questions throughout this critique, please pop them into the comments. Garrett is here. He's going to read those out to me. He often gives me a little break to sip my water and drink my coffee, which is a great time to answer a couple of questions. And yeah. So our 20 images, I have just opened them up into Photoshop. If this is your first time watching a critique, I go through each image and I use Photoshop to sort of draw on them, talk a little bit about where they could be improved and how they could be improved. It's how do I explain it? When we do critiques, it's not so much, about me picking images to pieces. It's more about me just giving you a few pointers on where images could be slightly improved. And that's what this whole process is about. We love doing this. I love being able to come in here once a month and do this because I can't critique every image that gets shared into the group. But even if you haven't submitted a photo before, you still learn a lot from this process because you start to see photographs through someone else's eyes, things that you might not have noticed previously. And do you know what? By no means am I an expert or perfect, but I'm just going to share what I know, what I see, and try to give you as much feedback as I possibly can. So yeah, it looks like we've got a few people. We've got UK, Wales, must be late in the UK, midnight, yes. Good morning from beautiful Tenterfield. Hi, Mum. How did I not know? Alrighty.
All right, we're ready to go?
We are ready to go. So we've got...
Let's do the first image.
Okay. So I'm just going to grab my brush here and make it nice and red so you guys can see what I am drawing, what I'm talking to. Gosh, this baby is posed beautifully. I'm looking at this sweet little face and just, it looks comfortable, looks relaxed. The placement of the hands is lovely. There's a couple of things that are standing out to me. Now, if you have a look at the proportion of the baby's head in comparison to, say, the elbows and the arms, it looks quite large. So that camera angle, as you come in with a wide-angled lens, is going to create some form of distortion and make that baby's head look quite big. So you will see this if you can compare it to another image shot with a longer focal length. You're going to see it a lot easier and identify the distortion that it is creating. So perhaps next time use a longer focal length. I use a 24-70 lens purely because I love that longer focal length at 70mm, so I can get all of those features nice and perfect and within proportion of each other, and I'm not creating any distortion there. So that's one thing that I've kind of noticed here. Another is just how bright the background is down here, and the background, as in background I mean the blanket that the baby's laying on, but also in the background over here, it is extremely bright up in here. So as we start to have a look, I'll just take it into curves at this histogram so you can see this is the information in that file. So if I click here on my little hand and I just move my brush, you can see that this is the darkest part of the image. We've got some really dark shadows down in here. And then we've got some really bright areas back here. Now these are the brightest parts of the image, so that information you can start to see is really, really pushing it in terms of being overexposed and losing detail. So you've got to be careful when you are capturing your files that you are keeping detail in those highlights, because they won't print anything and they become really distracting as bright areas in the file. This can be controlled by directing your light more towards the baby's face and not so much the baby's the background behind the baby. So when I just finished teaching my lighting tutorial class on newborn posing, and I talk a lot about the direction and the intensity of light. So basically, this is the main subject of your image. You want the light to light that baby's face, not the background. So you've got to turn that light more towards the baby and feather it away from that background. So for example, I've got my little roll of tape here. If we imagine that that's our posing bag and this is our light source here. Alright, so if you're standing here taking a photograph, if this is you taking the photograph over here and the baby's facing you, then the light shouldn't be coming directly down in behind that baby. You want to bring that light around and feather it so that the light is coming off the edge of the softbox, or if you're using a window you can still direct it quite easily, and that light comes across and lights the baby. Let's just say this is our baby here. It's lighting the baby and not the background. So you've got to be a little bit more careful when you are, positioning your light in the image to when you are doing the setup, to make sure that it is coming down exactly where you want it to fall, because when it is falling into the wrong parts of the image, they become very, very bright, very overexposed and distracting. When you are using light as a photographer, you use light to create impact. You use it to draw your eye to the main subject, and here it's just fallen short of doing that. So focus a little bit more on that. Otherwise, posing is beautiful, and that's the thing. You can be able to pose a baby beautifully, but light will make or break an image. One other quick thing is just with skin tones, be a little bit more careful in terms of evening out those skin tones. You can see down here the hands and the arm here are a lot brighter than the baby's face, and they're a little bit cooler in terms of tone as well. So just evening those out. You can do that using color balance and masking it off so you can paint it on only to the areas that you need.
Corey says your desk lamp is genius.
You like that? I made it. It's so funny. Oh, and it works. Is it plugged in?
Yeah, it's plugged in. You turn it on.
Look at that. It's very noisy though. I'll turn it away so it's just not distracting and blinding you because it's so powerful. Okay, let's go to our next image. Alrighty. Okay, the color palette here and the styling is lovely. I think you've done a great job with the choice of wrap and that background, and you've done a great job at sort of smoothing out that background here from what I can see, and that baby's hair is just adorable. What I'm sort of looking at here in terms of the pose is I suppose that you've done quite well with the wrapping and the pose. I can see that there's a little bit of post-production work going on down here to kind of make that wrap nice and smooth and round. But your camera angle, it looks to me like you're just slightly off. You're coming in more from this angle as opposed to straight down above the baby. So you do need to be a little bit more over the baby so that the head is closest to the camera. If you find it hard to do that, just try positioning the baby so that the head is more elevated in terms of the supports that you place underneath the baby. So you can elevate them that way to get their head up nice and close. And by doing that, what happens is you reduce the size of the body. when the head is closest to the camera, you reduce the size of the body. That's something to always keep in mind. Also, because you are sort of straight on like this, another camera angle could be coming in from the side, so you're coming more around the side here towards the baby's head, and then this part of the baby becomes further away from the camera again, just from a different angle, to reduce the size of it. And then if you've got problems with, say for example, a nappy or diaper underneath the wrap, and you are trying to reduce the size of it or sort of hide it based on that camera angle, it's going to be much easier to do that. So as I kind of come in here, I can see that with the cloning and the softening, when you are doing that, you are losing the amount of texture that is in the wrap. So you can see over here you've got a lot of texture and detail. It's quite sharp. When you come up here where it's been cloned in, it's got a very soft feathered edge around the edge, and it doesn't match the rest of it. So you need to make sure when you're doing that you keep that consistency. An easier way to do it, if you are just trying to, if you didn't get the chance to get it right in camera, is using some of the information that's already there. Instead of using the clone tool and the patch tool, you can use parts of the image that is already there. So I've basically just lassoed some information, bringing it in. You can then adjust it. I'm just warping it here. I teach all of this in my retouching classes as well. And I mean, I haven't even feathered it, but you can also just bring it down so you start to match the shadowing. But that's an easier way to do it than trying to clone in areas of that wrap, because it will take you a long time and you're not going to be able to get that same the opacity right in terms of the detail and the shadowing as well. Alrighty. Those eyelashes are just gorgeous. It does appear to be just a little bit soft in focus here, but what I can see is that the wrap here is nice and sharp, so you've just missed that focus. So you really want to move that focal point to the eye line so that it's focusing on those eyelashes, because when we look at someone's face, the first thing we do is we look at the eyes. So that's what you want to be sharp. I can see the hair is nice and sharp up here. And if you're shooting wide open at say 2.8 or less in terms of your aperture, just if you're not getting that focus right, just sort of maybe close down your aperture a little bit more, bring it up to about f4 or something like that. That will help you increase that focal plane so you can get it nice and sharp. Also, try not to focus recompose, because if you're shooting wide open, you might be focusing up here and then moving your camera down. You will slightly move off that focal plane and it won't be nice and sharp. Alrighty, when you are smoothing out the background, just remember not to remove all detail and shadowing. So I can see just around here, so you've got some shadow and some sharpness going on here at the edge of the baby, but over here, it's become really sort of soft and less intense in terms of where you've painted over that. So be careful also of smoothing out that backdrop to do that. Alrighty. Skin tones, maybe perhaps warming up those skin tones just a little bit. When you remove a lot of the reds out of babies, you can make them look quite sort of grey and flat, so just be careful with that also. Direction of the light though, I can see it's coming in from the side, possibly coming in from a little bit of a higher viewpoint would be beneficial as well. So just consider the direction of that light. I always look for the little shadows, and you can see that shadow's just coming up a little bit, so kind of direct that shadow down so that the light comes down across the baby's face there. That would also reduce the amount of light that is hitting this side of the wrap, making it the brightest part of the image. So if you have that light come up a little more, rotate that baby's head towards that light just a bit more, you will notice a big difference. So yeah, just a few things there to look at. I can't think of anything else. I think you've done a great job of styling it. The wrapping could do with a little bit of finessing, and the posing, you're starting to get that really curly shape. All right, let's go next image.
We've got lots of people joining us from all around the world.
Fantastic. Hi.
We've
Oh,
got
Serbia.
Serbia, yes.
Welcome. Hi.
Ohio.
Hi, everyone.
So-
I'm off to the States next Friday, a week today. Can't wait. I've got workshops in LA, Houston, Utah, and then I'm off to a wedding in Palm Springs, and then I'm back. Looking forward to it. Hope the weather's nice. Alrighty. Okay, the posing again is done really well here. The baby looks nice and comfortable. When I was talking before about perspective in terms of the head looking quite large in comparison to the bodies, here is where it's this is shot obviously with a longer focal length, so I can see that the perspective is spot on. So that's great. Couple of little things. This is probably the most distracting thing in the image at the moment. It's really standing out in terms of where my eye goes. I'm looking at the baby's face, but I keep coming back up to that bright headband, and it's because the white in that headband is so bright. So you could tone that down. If we have a little looky here, it is really quite bright. So I'll bring up my curves palette again, and I'll be able to show you. You can see the information there when the little dot moves on my graph, just how bright that is. So if I actually hold in the Alt key here, and you can see where there's no information in that headband, so it's really overexposed. And I know when you're trying to get the light right on the face and the intensity on the skin tones right, when you're shooting, just keep that histogram up on the back of your camera so you can see the information that you're capturing in that file. And that just means that you might need to bring back your exposure a little bit, turn down your light. Oh, we'll get rid of this curves palette. and adjust that. Skin tones look lovely, they're nice and warm. The green in the headband matches the background perfectly. It's just that white flower. So you can tone it down in post-production if you want to, but with little information there's nothing to play with. So you've got to be careful about that. Alrighty, the green wrap in the background is nice and soft, but one thing that I'm kind of looking at here is you've got lines in the front. So you've got texture and detail here, drawing you obviously into the image, and then they kind of draw you in. It's sort of almost reminding me of a wave on the beach, how that kind of wave comes in and then it crashes down onto the sand. It's kind of what this is doing back here, and then we start to lose all of that detail in the background there because of the depth of field and the softening that's been done here. So with all of those darker sort of shadows, they do draw your eye and weight the image back behind the baby. Even though that baby takes up the foreground, maybe just softening that down a little bit so that your focus still remains on that baby. All of the little things like that we use in our photos, we use different elements to style different setups. We just have to make sure that they complement the setup, complement the photo, and not distract or take your eye away from where you intend the viewer to go to. One other little thing that I'll just sort of point out is this one teeny tiny finger that keeps drawing my eye straight down to that little finger. So yeah, maybe just grabbing that safe shot and then coming in and tucking that little finger back up will definitely remove that stray little finger. Otherwise, great job. Alrighty. Okay, oh, it is Halloween, of course, coming up. I keep seeing lots of pumpkins everywhere. Alright. So the direction of the light here is lovely in terms of the way it's coming across the baby. The baby's face is the brightest part of the baby, which is great. I'm just having a little look around here. The crop is kind of one thing that could potentially be changed. I'm not sure if you've shot a portrait for a reason, like if it's going into going next to something else or for whatever reason, but when you crop it like this, when you take a portrait photo like this and you have all of this foreground and background, and then it cuts in really tight to the subject and the setup, it constrains it in a way that makes it sort of a little jarring, I suppose, especially when you've got really contrasting colours like this and you've got the oranges and the greens, because it's such a strong subject. Cropping it and photographing it in a landscape orientation would really have changed the whole impact of this image, and giving space around the baby over here and around the subject, because it is more of a landscape setup when you look at it, in terms of it goes that way, it doesn't go up, with the way that you've styled all of the different little things here. In terms of exposure, it looks great. The basket over here is just a little bit bright, and because it's on the edge of that frame, it really does pull you out of the photo. So be careful of that. And just the hue, the saturation in the tones, the orange pumpkin could be toned down just a little bit. The green over here is quite dark in the background, so we'll come in and have a little bit of a look. And I can see that there's been a little bit of work over here, probably just to cover up a diaper or something underneath that nappy, but the texture and the hardness of that line where it meets the skin is slightly off, and you can still see that there is a little bit of a line there. As you come out, you can still see it, and then as you come around the edge of the subject there, you can see that there's still a few little lines possibly in that background that need a little bit more retouching there. But is it like a filter? It is. So it's like one of those painterly filters that's been put over the setup. It does make it, when you zoom in, you've got to see it. So if you're going to use something like that, use it so you can see it, so that it adds to the image. Maybe not have it reduced down so much that it just makes it look blurry, if that makes sense. Because what it's doing is creating some really hard, sharp lines around the edge of each object in this photograph, but it's become very, very soft as it goes towards that hard line, so it doesn't have that sort of flow from one object to the other. The over sharpening here just on that little face there has created a few sort of lines as well around the face. If you are sharpening an image, just make sure that you're only sharpening the areas that need to be sharpened, so focus on more of the face and things like that. This little bright spot on the nose too, you can turn that down quite easily. So I know sometimes they're hard to avoid when we are lighting our babies and subjects. So using the patch tool, you can reduce the brightness of that. So now if I go up, I was going to use a shortcut key, but go fade, edit, fade, patch selection. You can bring the opacity of that down, and now that nose is just that little bit softer, it's not as bright. Alright, so yeah, maybe just change the orientation of that to landscape, and work on a few of those other little kind of areas in terms of the brightness and the retouching there. The skin tones as well are just a little bit dark and red in some areas, so warming those up and just reducing those red tones that are sort of through the baby and some of those darker, more shadowy areas will really benefit. Alright, next image. We got any questions? I have a sip of my coffee.
Not coming in yet, but still lots of people watching us live. We're up to 56.
Oh, good morning everyone, or good night wherever you are.
Fish has just joined us.
Hello. If you can't stay for the full duration of the live critique, it does stay in the group, so you can come back and watch it anytime. You can actually use the search bar, because all of our monthly critiques stay in the group for you to go back and re-watch. And every month we let you know when you can submit if you didn't get an image in this time around. Alrighty. Yeah, the styling of this is lovely. I love the colour palette. Those beautiful soft grey tones. I'm guessing it's a little boy. It works really well. The positioning of that light coming straight in towards the top of the baby's head there, it's lighting this part of the face, and then it's obviously lighting the hand and the little arm there. So just bringing that light around a bit more, or bringing that baby's face and chin up towards that light source, will help just spread the light a little more down here into some of those sort of more hidden, tucked in areas, that like the chin, that we often struggle to get up. But bringing that light around will definitely help. It'll also add a little bit of light so that the shadows aren't so heavy across the top of the eyes there, as the brow's sort of protecting it too. The background's been handled really well. It's softened, but you can still see a little bit of that texture and detail there. The foot, what I'm kind of looking at here is these tones down here in the skin. So getting those skin tones right, and when you are retouching, making sure that you come in quite, sort of quite zoomed in. I'm at 400% at the moment, but zoom in and have a look around that image, because I could see that back here looking at it, those little purple tones, to get those skin tones just right. So also over here in the hand as well. Now, if you've done a lot of retouching in post-production to get the color tones right in the image, it just means that you've got to go back to your camera skills and get that white balance right in camera. If you're using artificial light, do a custom white balance to get it perfect. And then you'll spend a lot less time in post-production trying to fix skin tones and things like that, because I can see a lot of magenta tones. Or if the blanket was purple, I'm not sure if you've changed it that way, if it's not a white balance image, obviously not knowing and understanding all of it. But if you are changing tones, you've got to be nice and consistent, because as you kind of come in and have a look around, you can see there's still some more sort of purpley tones up through here and around underneath the chin there as well. But those fingers were quite noticeable. Other thing, just having a look at the size of the baby's head here in comparison to the size of those legs. So if you're shooting with a wider angle lens, just be careful with that distortion. You're better off coming up a little more, instead of being so square on to that baby. Come around more towards that light source with yourself and your body, and shooting down that way, so that you're not sort of so square on here as well. But yeah, other than that, good job. Also with that little front hand, because it's sort of sticking out there, and the fingers aren't together, they're sort of curled over a little bit, it is distracting. So grab that safe shot and then bring that little hand back up and tuck it up underneath the face there, or even just placing it down more in line with the body if you can't get the hand up underneath the face. Recently I've worked with a couple of babies that did not like their hands being touched, so you've got to work with them, and you don't always have to get those hands perfect up underneath the cheek. You can bring them down, just keep them in line with the body. Also you can bring the hand down and rest it on the thigh, so there are different options there in terms of where you place it.
Sherry has asked a question. You mentioned about bringing the light around slightly more to get underneath the chin. What direction should they bring that light for this particular photo?
So bringing it around, I've got my light source on here. Okay, if you've got the baby here and you're the photographer and you're over here, then you need to bring that light around more towards the front of the bag. So I wouldn't have it sort of more side on and facing the bag. You've got to bring it around towards the front and then feathering it off. So I know a lot of people, when they use large softbox, sort of say, oh, well, I can't get the right camera angle because the softbox is so big. But as you start to feather that light, bringing it around towards the front of the box, feathering it away, the light is still going to spill off the edge, and you're going to have lots of room to come in and get that shot. So this is where, this is why I taught the lighting tutorial, and I focused a lot on the main light sources that newborn photographers use, because when we are looking to get the right camera angles, we are looking to use beautiful soft light. So I focus a lot on the direction, the intensity of that light, and how you can get it right every time in camera. But often with their little faces tucked down like this, you just got to bring their chin up a little bit more towards that light in terms of that pose, and then you can move your body around a little more to shoot down towards the top of that nose too, which will hide a lot of the shadows and things going on underneath and down in this area. Alrighty.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So welcome. Oh, the styling's beautiful here. I love all of these gorgeous brown tones. And the baby's face looks really well rested and relaxed. The first thing I'm sort of looking at here, and I don't often shoot, I suppose, this type of setup from above like this in a bucket. And when I look at it, because I don't shoot it personally myself, the one thing that I do often notice is the proportion of the head and the body. The body is quite sort of low down here inside this bucket. So if you have a look at and I'll make my brush just a bit smaller here. If you have a look at the size of the baby's head in comparison to the body, there's not that much difference. So to keep it, looking nice and I suppose natural to the eye, because what we've got to remember as photographers is that when other people look at our photographs, when our clients share our photos, when their friends and family look at those photos, because that's your target market as a client base. They're your clients. They don't know, obviously, anything. If they're not photographers, they don't know about camera angles. They don't know about how the baby was positioned. They don't understand that. It can make them feel like it doesn't sit right to the eye, because it's not what they would normally see in terms of the size difference and things like that. So we always must consider what our clients sort of think and things like that. There are certain trends, and I do see this set up quite often, but I want you to kind of consider maybe possibly bringing that baby's head up just a little bit more so the chin comes down, and lowering that camera angle just slightly so you can see more of that body. You come down, when you bring that camera down towards that body, you are going to increase, obviously, the size of that body. When you shoot with a wide angle, you are also going to increase the size of that baby's head if it is closest to the camera, and that will also reduce the size of the body. So there's a few things there to kind of think about. And obviously that's just my personal opinion, but I'm always considering what my clients think and how a photo makes them feel. Because when we look at photographs, we all have an instant reaction, whether it's, oh my God, that's beautiful, or oh, that baby looks uncomfortable, or whatever. And I'm not saying this baby looks uncomfortable, I'm just saying that all photos make people feel something. So we don't want to be trying to impress other photographers with our skills and what we can do. We want to be impressing the people out there that are buying our photographs. That's the most important thing we've got to remember as photographers that provide a product and service to people in exchange for money. The other thing that's really grabbing my eye is these hard lines right here in the middle that basically come out from the top of the baby's head and then below the baby as well. So they're quite strong. You can reduce those using, again, the patch tool is a great way to do it. So, and then just fading that patch so it's not so dark. And yeah, what else am I sort of looking at here? It's just that background, and I think because of that camera angle, when you have lines like this, you can see how they start to go, sort of merge in towards each other as that perspective is slightly changed. So reducing the lines will just make that less distracting. The cotton is just such a lovely little add here. I love the textures that I've used. When I come in, it is slightly soft, so just be careful of that. And the direction of the light as it's coming in, it's hitting the bottom of the baby's nose, and you can start to see the shadow up here as opposed to down here. So that direction of light, bring it more around this way as opposed to that way. And you'll notice a big difference there in the highlights and the shadows in terms of flattering the features, not so much highlighting unwanted areas like underneath the nose. Alrighty. Do love all the beautiful warm colours though, that was beautiful. Okie dokie. So we've got a lot going on here in terms of the background, and then obviously the brightest part of the image is the wrap around the baby. So it sort of looks like you've spent a long time putting all of this together here, and then the baby's obviously just been placed there in the middle. The background of this image is quite sharp and the baby is really soft. So one thing when you are shooting quite a large setup like this, because I'm guessing, you know, with the size of the baby and everything, that's quite a large sort of nest and area in terms of the leaves that have been scattered there. You know, if you're holding that camera up, it can be hard to get that focus just right on the baby's face. So possibly shooting 2 photos, coming in, getting a photo of that baby, and getting the focus right, and then pulling back and taking another one of the large setup and putting the 2 images together. If you can't get it right, you really want to try to avoid standing on top of on top of a step ladder or anything like that above a baby, for safety reasons. But the camera angle is slightly off here. Tilting that baby's head up, creating some support, will help as well. The one thing I'm really noticing here at the moment is how big the baby's body is compared to the baby's head, and that's because that camera angle, that perspective is slightly off. So when I use props like this, I create a nice deep well, and that's how I put the baby's bottom into the well. And then it becomes lower inside the prop, and that'll help bring that baby's head up higher so it is closest to the camera. The direction of light is also coming straight up underneath that baby's face. So I'll just increase the size of my brush there, sorry. So what we're doing there is creating, you know, that ghoul's lighting that they call. So it highlights underneath the nose, the bottom of the nose there is quite bright, and it creates some really sort of heavy shadows around the eye area as well. So you want the direction of that light to come down across the baby, not up underneath it as well. And when you're doing a big setup like this, trying to get everything in frame, I know, can be tricky. So this is where, for safety reasons, if I was doing something like that, I would get a photograph of the setup without the baby. I would stand on something to get that right elevation, and then I would come in and photograph the baby, as I mentioned before, and put those 2 photos together in Photoshop, which, you know, is not that difficult to do. It's just getting everything right in terms of the depth of field, the sharpness, and all of that kind of stuff.
Amanda says here, Kelly, you're amazing. Your explanations provide 24/7 mind explosions. So lots of nice stuff happening. And of course your hair looks great too.
Oh, I need a haircut so bad, but because I'm going away next week, I've been holding off to get it done before I go. Plus we've been so busy. One other little quick thing here, just those skin tones, they are really quite cool. So warming those up will benefit this as well, and it'll help sort of keep it all flowing beautifully inside this frame. I mean, I have actions that I use on a regular basis, but my Correct the Blue action here, with just warming up these skin tones. And you can see already it's sort of starting to now flow in terms of the styling. But what I would do first is reduce some of those blue tones, those cooler tones, and then warm them up a little bit more. All right. Oh, got God bless.
Oh, that's so good.
Look at those babies. Look at that hair. Oh, aren't they just gorgeous? So the hair almost looks like it's strawberry coloured. It's quite beautiful. So it is quite pink though. So I'm not sure if these babies had auburn coloured hair, as in nice red hair, but there are some strong pink tones here, and that was the first thing I've noticed. As you come in around the baby's skin tone here, you can see those pinky tones coming through, and then down into the back here. It is lovely. It's just, you could reduce those pink tones just a tad, I think, and it would work beautifully. There's also a little bit of a shift in color tone here in the blanket too. So I'll just make my brush a little bit smaller now. As the blanket, comes out towards the edge, it's just shifted in color from there to there. So be careful of that. You can do that quite easily in post-production. You can change your brush modes to color, select the color that you want, and then sort of paint over some of those areas to get it to match nicely as well. The perspective as well here is just slightly off. So as you've shot the babies, the bottom half, your camera angle is a little low, so you got to get right up and above those babies. So for example, if they were here inside I need something a bit bigger put in there. I need to make now, to go with my softbox, a miniature posing bag and baby. But yeah,
I've got something.
if you're shooting, which camera angle? If you're shooting, say for example, your two babies that are here, if you're shooting this way, you're going to shoot up their noses. So you've got to get up and above to get that perspective just right. That's really going to help benefit the image. I love the placement of them in terms of the holding hands. The little fist here underneath that baby's face is slightly distracting. I know sometimes they do actually look like big babies. They don't look too teeny tiny. They look nice and rounded in terms of their cheeks and things like that. So they don't look like they're too young. I'm guessing they might be a little bit older, which could be, in terms of around that sort of 4 to 5 week old mark, could be a little bit harder to position them as they're a bit more awake and alert. But yeah, getting that hand down and away from that face would really work better there. The other thing that I'm just going to touch on is headbands. This headband is cutting straight through the baby's head. Headbands need to go in the hair, up here. Place that headband up a little higher and off the face, and then that face will really stand out. Skin tones look lovely. Just get that camera angle up, and then you won't be seeing shooting up the nose, so to speak, and the bodies will be become a lot smaller with that camera angle. But yeah, other than that, great job. Love all of the colours. Alright. So I don't know, the first thing I sort of look at here with this image is it trying to tell a story? Is there a significant reason why the flowers are in the image? And for someone who doesn't know the family, doesn't know anything behind this, I could read a lot into it. Obviously, if it was shot for the family and the flowers do signify something, then obviously it's going to mean something to them, which is lovely. I often create photos purely, based on my clients' stories, and so that there's that emotional connection to the image. So I think that's lovely. If you've done it for those reasons, and the balance of the framing is really done well as well, in terms of the baby in the center of the frame and then the placement of those two flowers. One thing that is really sort of standing out for me is the size of the baby's body. So you can see it's sort of really quite large as you come around, and that wrap is quite bulky. So you could potentially liquefy that in a little bit, but you've got to be careful that when you do that, obviously you're moving information. So one way you could reduce the size of the wrap is just to warp it in ever so slightly. And just reduce the size, and then you could mask that off. So that's one way. And the baby's face just gets lost a little bit there, I think, with the size of that body. The other thing to focus here on is that light. It's coming in quite low and hitting. You can see that's why we've got this shadow here on the from the tassel of the bonnet. So get that light elevated up. So if you are, where's my tape go? Oh, I moved it. When you are photographing the baby like that, if that light is down low and it's coming across, it is going to create some of those shadows. So you've got to lift that light up and direct it. And if you do want it, directly across the top of the baby like that, then you lift the light up so that the light feathers across. If this is natural light, then if that's a big window, for example, that's natural light, then you block off the bottom of the window so that the light comes in from above and down across the baby. So that's a couple of things to consider there. And just in terms of shadows, you need to be consistent, because the shadows have been somewhat reduced over here on this side of the baby, but you've still got quite a strong shadow there on the tassel as well. So coming in, I mean, this baby's just gorgeous. The light coming across there from the side has created some hot spots. So lifting it up and feathering it slightly, reducing some of the intensity of that light, will definitely help with creating beautiful soft light, because you can see those shadows kind of coming across there. They're really sort of quite dark and contrasty there, so they do add a little bit of sort of distraction, I suppose, in terms of the face. But yeah, I love all the colours. I like seeing different things.
It's beautiful. Mitch is from the Philippines, and he'd
Hello.
like you to say hello to him.
Hi, Mitch.
Because he's a huge fan, and you've changed his life.
Oh.
And when do you have any plans to go to the Philippines?
Wow, no, I've never been there. I mean, gosh, I travel all the time, so yeah, I don't know. I would love to come there. I've never been there. It'd be great one day if we. All right. This beautiful blue tone. This is such a rich, lovely blue tone. Again, first thing I've noticed is that light. It's coming straight in from the side, and it's almost created split lighting. So when you light, and I'll do it on my face. When you light from the side, like which camera, Garrett, should I look at? It's directing me. When you light from the side like that, as that light comes across the face, it's obviously creating, some harsher shadows. So you've got to bring that light around on a 45-degree angle towards that baby's face, so you get a more even spill of light across the face and less contrast. So just turning that baby towards that light source and lifting it up as well. So that light is coming in. So I can see that the posing bag, right now, it's coming in like this. You've got to lift that light up, and you've got to bring that baby around towards that light source. The red tones here in the fingers just need a little bit more reducing and then warming up to match the rest of the skin tones. And the baby's skin is really, really soft, so I'm not sure if any softening has been added here, because I can see that there's a fair amount of detail here in the foreground, and then the baby's eyes are nice and sharp. So when you are softening, just be careful not to go over the edges of the baby. If you're using skin softening plugins like Portraiture, just be careful and try to mask it off the edges there, or keep it nice and consistent throughout the frame. Alrighty, a couple of these darker little areas down here in the front, This is obviously due to the supports underneath the blankets, and then getting those blankets nice and smooth. When you don't get them smooth and you've got those ripples where the light hits it, it creates these shadows. So you can lighten those. The easiest way to do it in Photoshop is using curves. So you can lighten those. And you can reduce the appearance of those purely by, lifting them up a little bit. I'm just doing this really quick, but just to show you. So that's one thing that I would look at there. But posing's lovely. Just be careful of those little fingers. Get that safe shot, then come in and scoop those little fingers out from underneath that chin so they look a little bit more comfortable. And then again with this in the background, you can't see where it's on the baby. It just looks like fabric behind the baby. So be careful when you are using different things like that, because if that wasn't there and that was all smooth, this photo would be just about that baby. Now it's kind of, you're looking around and you sort of, it's just a blurry, sort of messy, contrasty blob in the background that does take your eye away from the baby. So just be more aware of when placing things like that. Are they adding to the image or are they distracting you, pulling your eye away from the main subject? All right. I love the color palette here though. The styling in all of these photos so far has been done so well.
Oh, beautiful. There is a question here about lighting. So if you're using a 84 PLM, so the big brolly, with the Einstein strobe, would you lift it up off the floor?
That's one thing I've noticed. One thing I've noticed, and I do talk about this in my lighting tutorial. The one thing with light that I think people forget is, we have beautiful free light outside. It's the sun, and it's always elevated. So when we think about light and you go back through history of incredible artists and the way that they painted light in their photographs, it always came from that elevated angle. It always lit their subjects beautifully, and we've got to remember that as photographers, how we direct that light towards our subject. So when you are shooting anything, whether it is on the floor, on a posing bag, or somebody standing, that light should be slightly elevated and come from that angle down that falls gently across the face. So think about light in those terms. Anyway, let's keep going. I could go on and on and on. Okay. The styling here, the color palettes, absolutely beautiful. I think this is really kind of quirky, that little hat and the teddy bear. The crop, I'm not sure if this has been cropped in post-production or in camera, but it is really constraining as it kind of hits the top of the prop and the bottom there. So just give it a little bit more space. You know what, even rotating the bowl in camera so that it wasn't, if you can't quite get it all, sort of put it more on an angle when you are shooting something like this. But if you give it more space around the baby, then it won't be so constrained and tight. All right, let's get rid of that. What I'm looking at here also is just the placement of the baby, sort of straight across the top of that prop. It looks like there's a lot of support. I can't quite see how deep this particular prop is, but it looks like there's quite a fair amount of support under and around the baby. So when you are filling your props to place babies in them, just make sure that you leave enough room for their little bodies to go down inside there, because he looks like he's quite flat across the top of this shape, and he's not molded or placed in the bowl to match the curves and the shape of the prop. Bless you, Garrett's sneezing. The little outfit and the hat is lovely, but the baby's face is getting lost down in here. That hat is really quite big. So potentially sort of molding the baby, I say molding the baby, but shaping the baby, placing the baby in there to suit more of the prop in terms of a curve. So sort of putting their little head up there, placing him on his side slightly, and bringing his little head up in here, and then his body around this way. You might be able to cross the legs up into this part of the prop so that he doesn't look like a straight line going across the center of it. So that's one thing that I'm always considering when I'm using different shapes to put babies in, and how am I going to match the shape of the prop so that it flows and it doesn't look disjointed, if that makes sense. The light is lovely. It's sort of coming across the baby there. You can see these little shadows and so forth. It is quite bright. The baby's skin is quite bright, so possibly just bringing down the intensity of that light. With a shape like this, such a heavy shape, and it's a solid, strong structural prop, be careful that the lines in your background don't sort of pull you away from that. So you can still keep these beautiful wooden textured backgrounds, just soften the lines so that they weren't so heavy in terms of the direction that they're pulling you, because you've got the baby going one way and it's quite a strong line, and then you've got the lines in the backdrop going the other way, and then you've got these heavy sort of lines this way. So there is a lot going on inside the frame, and the baby's just somewhat getting a little lost. It's more about all the props and the placements of everything than it is the actual baby. So when we think about using, teddy bears and hats and different sort of shaped props like this, how are they benefiting the baby? How is the baby then the main subject if we're continually adding other elements to the image? So unless they tell a story that means something to our client, then they become more of a trend as opposed to a meaningful photograph for the family, if that makes sense. Okay.
You're obviously explaining things really well today, because people are just fascinated with you and how beautiful your hair is, and you've got lovely earrings.
Thanks. If my mum's still watching, she buys me most of my earrings. She finds the best earrings. I never have time to shop, and thank you. I'm feeling very loved. And it's funny because the last 2 days, both Garrett and I, we've been really busy in the studio, but they've been sort of days. Do you know what I mean? Like at the start of both days, we've kind of felt like a bit like we've been dragging our feet. So I'm feeling quite flattered now, and I'll have a bit of a bounce in my step when we finish this.
Keep it coming, people.
Okay, again, styling, great job getting all of the colours, the bonnet, the wrap and the backdrop, they all blend, really well together there. One thing I am noticing, and you've done well, is to get that baby's head higher in the frame than the body. If we look at our crop, hang on, we don't want a 16:9 ratio. If we look at our rule of thirds, I'm always sort of looking to have that baby placed in the bottom 2/3 when I'm shooting setups like this, have that head slightly higher in the frame. I think you've done a really great job there, that it's sort of balanced. You've got equal distance from the bottom and the head to the edge of the frame. There's just a couple of little things that could really benefit this photo. The wrap looks, it almost looks a little loose. So when you're wrapping a baby like this, it just takes practice, because it's learning how to keep that wrap as you're wrapping with different wrapping techniques. It's learning how to keep that wrap nice and tight, nice and firm, and placing your hands in the right places to keep it tight and firm as you are wrapping the baby. Because if they're wriggling, if they're moving, if they're stretching, whatever you, that wrap can move. So you've got to be quite careful placing your hands in the right places to keep it nice and tight and firm as you are wrapping, and to get those little feet and everything nice and tucked in. The wrap in the background does not need to be there. It's bright and it's a triangle. So if we have a look at the shape at the moment, and if we zoom out, the main shape is this on an even background. So you've got this, this blue background and it's nice and even, but you've got this quite big shape now in the center that doesn't really flow. So I would have tucked that wrap in, up nice and tight around that baby, and then it would have been just all baby, and you wouldn't have even seen that. So not that this is how you would fix it, but for example, if we just remove that out of the image, you'll see what I mean. And I'm doing this so rough.
Don't judge people.
Yeah, don't judge. This is just to eliminate it, to show you what I mean. Now we're all baby, and we don't have that light background taking your eye away from the baby. So another thing that I want to talk a little bit about here is that camera angle. With you coming in, hang on, go back to our red brush. With you coming in sort of straight on like this, the baby's body is quite large, and you can see underneath the bottom down here where the wrap's kind of a little messy and tucked in. You don't need to see those areas. So if you bring your body around this way and you come from a higher perspective, you'll eliminate a lot of these areas that you don't need to see, and you'll also reduce the size of the baby's body as you move further away with your camera. And then just lifting yourself up a little bit higher here, because your camera angle is coming in. And if you think about when, let's just say, like one of those little laser pens with the red light. So if your lens could point and put a red light on the baby from the end of the lens to the baby, it's going to hit around there. So I'm always trying to get a straight line to the top of the nose, which means, so instead of the camera angle coming in here, the camera angle now comes down to the top of the nose. So like more towards the bridge of the nose, if that makes sense, instead of up and underneath the nose. So moving your body around will help with reducing the size of that body. The little head, so when you do move up, you don't get the face as square on. You do see more of the, you're coming down from that higher perspective. If you are then going to lose part of the face, you just need to get that safe shot and then come in and, I place my hands on the sides of the baby's head, and then I just give it a little turn to bring that chin up towards that camera angle that I'm looking for. Just here underneath the baby's head with that bonnet, the bonnet does look quite big, and the tassel is really sort of loose and just sitting there. A little bit more attention to detail will help as well. So getting that bow, just reducing the size of the bow so it's nice and neat and sits off to the side instead of sort of spilling around underneath the baby.
You normally do like tiny bow, long tassels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just when the bonnets are big like this, I tie them so that they're beautiful around the face, and then I gather them at the back and tuck them up underneath the head if they're too big, and that'll help reduce a lot of that excess wool or wrap, whatever it is, around the face there as well. Skin tones look great on the baby's face. Just warming up those feet, removing some of those reds and warming them up to match the skin tones will really benefit there. Direction of the light looks lovely though. Okie dokie.
Got a question about colour. What colours do you think complement darker skinned babies?
It depends. When I talk to my clients about colours, I use colours that they love. I always ask them questions like, what sort of colours do you have in your home? Do you have light coloured furniture? Do you have dark, sort of more timber furnitures? What colours? And so forth. So I photographed a beautiful family yesterday, and we did everything really light and bright because the mum is right into interior designing, and I looked through her Instagram page, and their house is beautiful and light and bright, so I wanted to create a portrait that went on their wall. Now they had quite dark skin and dark hair and sort of more olivey toned skin, the mum and the little girl. So I went with white, and it looked absolutely beautiful and clean. But it depends. depends on what they want. I think all colours can work really well. It just, instead of focusing on what matches someone's skin tones, focus find out what they like, and create something for them. But you know what I also do is when a family walk into my studio, I always look at what they're wearing. If I've told them what to wear, it's a different subject, but if they're coming in, I look at, because a lot of people will bring their outfits with them on hangers, so I look at what they're wearing, and then I start to see whether they're into more muted tones, or if they're into more bright flowery patterns, or if whatever. So I always have a look at their style. So for me, for example, I always wear solid colors and darker colors, so therefore I'm attracted to that, and I start to talk and communicate with my clients, and I create for them. But yeah, rich colors obviously on darker skin always look nice to me, but that's my personal opinion.
Comes down to style. Yeah, personal style.
Alrighty. The colours, the soft colours, muted tones in this are just lovely. The blanket with the background here. And I like this different sort of camera angle as well. That chin is coming down a little bit, and I can see that the baby's sort of, instead of sort of coming forward and sitting into this pose, the baby's kind of sitting like that. Sometimes it can be hard to get them to really relax those shoulders, but it can also really benefit the way that you position the supports underneath the baby. So making sure for this particular pose that you create a shelf, I call it, with supports. So if I've got my posing bag, for example, here, I always put, like, if I'm posing the baby, sort of, let's just say it's going to face that way. So you've got the head here and the bottom here. I'll create a nice sort of solid shelf here for the baby to sit up on. That's what I'm going for, that height, to get it to sit forward and into that space. Can be a little tricky to get just right. Like, this is one of those poses that not every baby likes to go into. They like to curl down and they don't like to stretch out. So yeah, I always kind of look at creating that shelf, that support underneath the chest area of the baby for their little arms to rest on. Makes it very comfortable, because I don't know if you're going to do it or not, but at home, lay down on your stomach on the flat floor, just on the floor, and then try and bring your arms forward and put your chin on the back of your hands, laying completely flat. It's not comfortable. So you've got to create that space for them to sit on, to get their little arms forward and to get that chin forward as well, if that makes sense. All right. The light coming in here, it's really lovely. I can see that it's slightly elevated coming down there on the face. You see that little shadow there. It is a little contrasty coming down here into some of these shadows. So that's the only thing with an camera angle like that. If you want to get that more side-on shot, possibly sort of have a look at some of those little distracting elements, move around just ever so slightly to reduce some of these sort of darker shadowy areas in terms of that camera angle, and they will be less visible. Sharpness focuses great on those little eyelashes. It is quite soft as you come down here, which obviously comes down to personal taste if you're shooting wide open, but you've got a really sharp area here where the baby's hair is, but then it's very soft down here. So just keeping that consistency in terms of that depth of field will benefit you, but just coming around a little bit more will also give you a bit more focus down the side of the image too. But yeah, other than that, I think you've done great. The skin tones just down here in the hands could potentially be warmed up just a little bit, but other than that.
Nice. Crystal says, thanks for the tip about the laser pen.
Oh. I know, my brain works in such different ways, and when I try to explain things, hoping that people can obviously understand what's coming out of my head, I shake my head often at what does come out of my mouth, but hopefully you understand
sense, obviously,
what I'm talking about. Okay, we got a taco pose. You know, in terms of posing, I think you've done really well here. The things that I'm kind of looking at are the camera angle and the lighting and the retouching. Everything else, you've done great. So placement of the hand under the face is lovely. The little feet are lovely. The skin tones are really quite flat. So it looks like, you know, a lot of those reds have been reduced and then it's sort of been evened up or not, but he does look very fair. So yeah, there's something quite off with the skin tones in terms of density. And that'll come also from the lighting, which I'm going to get to right now. So the light I can see is coming in across the baby this way. This is lighting the back of the baby. It's creating some heavy shadows here. It's lighting behind the baby and down here too. So what you want to improve the skin tones in terms of the brightness here, you need to create some shadows in the right areas. So you want that light to come down across the baby from this direction. I'm always talking about having that head closest to the light source, so bringing that light around towards the top of the baby there. You're also going to eliminate these shadows here and here, and you'll start to create more shadows over here, because overall the image is quite flat and there's no depth or density in terms of those shadows. So that's pretty much all I need to say about the lighting, so just changing that. Other than that, yeah. Oh, camera angle, that was the other one. I'm just trying to remember what I was going to say. So, you know, you're sort of shooting down from a quite high perspective here. So you want to come around and you sort of square on from a higher place. Bring your body around and down lower, so the head is closest to the camera. It'll reduce the size of the body and the amount of skin that you're seeing back here, and it'll bring that face closer to the camera, making it the most dominant thing. So when you use light and camera angle and you focus on that baby's face, you will make that the main focal point of the image, which is the goal. All right, retouching. It looks like the skin has just been really sort of worked, I suppose, in terms of getting it even. It just doesn't have any depth. And then when we start to soften the background up here, you need to be careful of banding and things like that can start. So you can start to see where the texture is fading off into the background up here. So maybe reducing some of that softness, or because you can see how it's kind of come into the hairline there and around the wrap down here where it's starting to disappear and there's no separation between it and the background. All right, next image. Oh, the greens. Everyone's done such a great job with their styling and getting the colors together. I love the colored wrap with this green background. The background is been handled really well. There's lots of texture and detail there. The light coming across the baby is coming across and lighting the baby beautifully, but the head is quite dark in comparison to the body. So possibly just feathering that light and bringing it around a little more towards the baby's head and not so much on the body will benefit this. As we kind of come in, focus is great, skin tones are lovely on the face. So just having a look here at the skin tones in the little foot, a little bit sort of pinky purpley there, just reducing those, then warming them up to match the skin tones of the face as well. And the reds in the hands down here too. The exposure just is slightly low. If we have a little look here, let's get rid of those red lines at our curves. So if we have a look at where our skin tones are falling here, they're in sort of the the mid-range of our histogram. You can see the little dot up here where they are. So if you think about black and white, and then you've got your mid-tones in the middle here, your skin tones, obviously if this was a darker skin tone baby, then they should be sitting down around this area in the histogram. But I can see here by some of the skin tones on the baby's hands and the feet that that the skin is just slightly underexposed, so it needs to be lifted and it needs to sit around here in terms of when you think about shades and tone. So if you look at my skin tone, my skin isn't halfway between black and white. It's brighter than that. So we need to make sure that when we are capturing these images that we're exposing for those skin tones and placing them where they should be in terms of tone in our histogram. So that's what we're always looking for. But yeah, if I was to lift these skin tones just a little bit like that, it's going to help really elevate the image as well. And you can do that and mask it off the other parts. So it is, you can draw more attention to that face as well. Wrapping, the little feet just kind of popping through here, we can only really see one, so perhaps if you can't get that wrap right, tuck it up and remove the foot so it's not just kind of one little toe poking through, or just get that wrap a little bit tighter. It does take time though to get your wrapping perfected and practice. I've got 3 different fake babies here that I continually kind of use to show people wrapping techniques, but it all comes down to practicing as much as you possibly can and knowing where to place your hands as you're bringing that wrap around the baby. Oh, instantly the connection between the dad and the baby is just lovely. The little nose is touching there. That backlight coming through has been handled really well. It is quite bright. Obviously, it's you want to try and get it nice and white. But with that exposure, what's happened is we've lost some detail here in the back of dad. So keeping an eye on that area there in camera in your histogram will really benefit there. And the focus is just slightly off. It is a little soft. If we have a look up here, dad's hair is nice and sort of sharp, and then the baby's face down here is quite soft. I really like this pose. It's such a gentle pose. The one thing I do try to do though is you can see the baby's sitting quite low down here on dad's chest, and you can see how dad's kind of really reaching over there. Sometimes it's not that flattering, so the best way to do it is to have that baby sit really high, position that baby high on dad's chest so that they don't have to bend over so much to create that hunch. Like, he's a nice big strong guy, you can see. Not all dads look like this. So when you are doing it, a tip is to get that baby up a little bit higher so that you're not getting them hunched over. The shoulder here is also really big. Getting that longer focal length will help reduce that in terms of distortion as well, even though he probably likes having big arms. And looking at a photo of himself with really big arms. Skin tones look great as well. So yeah, just get that focus right and bring that baby up a little bit higher. But I do love the connection. Great. Okay, more beautiful tones. I love the matching wraps with the backgrounds. They look really great. The composition here for me is slightly off. So the baby is, I'm not quite sure what the baby is on here because it looks like the hand is going down, whereas this surface when we're posing babies should be nice and even, nice and flat. Whether it's elevated or not, it should never kind of drop down like that and look like the baby's on the edge of something. So that's kind of a little bit awkward. And in terms of the composition, if we look at our, our rule of thirds, you know, we've got a lot going on over here behind the baby, but yet the baby's so tight and constrained over here on this side of the frame. And the baby is quite flat as well through the edge there. So, it's not going to do it for me, my computer's playing up. But what you want to do is kind of have that baby's head up a little higher in the frame. And then I would kind of leave a bit more room as well. And I often shoot with my light source on my right hand side, so the baby's head is often on the right. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And our eye naturally reads from left to right. So even placing the baby on the other side, and I'll just show you quickly. Now we have a different image. So, and it makes it a little bit more comfortable to look at, if that makes sense. So just be careful there with surfaces that can make it look like the baby is on the edge of something. Obviously that makes me feel a little uneasy when I see things like drop-offs in terms of the surface that they're on. And then with the pose, just trying to get those hands tucked up underneath that face as they come away. They do just become a little bit distracting there, and you can see that baby's head is sort of quite far around, trying to get that chin back. So I'm always looking with this particular pose to line up the jaw with the top of the hand underneath the baby's chin there. But yeah, the lighting as well. The brightest part of this image is the baby's arm right here, and then you've got some hot spots over here. So just reducing the intensity of that light. It looks like it's really pointing down towards that baby. So just feathering it softly will really help soften the overall appearance of this image. Alright, and the skin tones, they're just a little flat in terms of the reducing them. So you can see the lips there are sort of blending into the tones that are in the face, and you can see that there's a little bit of, if we zoom in here, you can see that there's sort of like a colour shift here that's happening in the skin tones. You've got some greeny kind of tones up here and down here, and then you've got some more sort of yellow tones. Babies with jaundice often have sort of, tricky skin to work with, but yeah, the skin here is a little too warm and then inconsistent in terms of tone. Just be careful when you are reducing a lot of those reds. Okie dokie. Look at that. This is lovely in terms of the pose and the bonnet and everything. The little hand underneath the baby's head there is just in a fist. It does look fine, and I know you can't always get those fingers out, so sort of getting that safe shot and then coming in and trying to get those fingers out. The skin is really, really soft here. So when we start to lose the texture in the skin, it can look like plastic almost. So you want to leave some texture, some detail there in the skin, because as we kind of come around and we can see in here around the nose, that's the texture I'm talking about. And if the baby's had problem skin, it can be really tricky. But if you're using a skin softening plug-in like Portraiture, just be careful to mask it off and bring that opacity back so you can still see some texture there, because it's been really sort of heavy hand. It's been applied quite heavy. But also when you come in, the skin's been so softened, but yet we've got quite a few, sort of little things that needed tidying up as well. So you've got to be consistent. And then down here, and then the lips, just tidying those little things up as well. Stray hairs. The skin tones in terms of consistency, they're quite sort of warm up here in the face, and then they kind of cool off down here and they're warm in the body. I can see that a lot of reds have been reduced, so you just have to make sure that you don't pull them back too much. But also the light will affect that too. I can see here that the light's coming in, you know, from quite a sort of side angle here, and that the what's going on? The because I haven't got my brush selected. The arm and this side of the face are quite bright, and then this side of the face you can see the shadows there, and as the sort of shadows here, you know, from the baby's face sort of start to soften as the light's coming in behind the baby and now adding light to the back of the bum and coming down that way. So when you do have that light coming in, and you can see it sort of falling across the background there, because the foreground is actually slightly darker than the background. You want the foreground to be brighter than the background as that light's coming across. So it's just shifting that light, again, as we keep mentioning it, in terms of the placement of it and feathering it. When you get that baby perfect, if you can move your light, move your light. If it's a big window and you can't move it, turn the posing bag so you get that light right on the baby's face. In terms of crop, the baby is on quite an angle there, which is quite lovely. It's just you've got a big area here and a big area here that isn't consistent with these corners. Just probably allowing a little bit more space here at the bottom of the baby. And what I mean by that is, when you're looking for that right camera angle, you probably kind of just want to not have it so constrained and cropped so tight in certain areas, and you can bring that baby forward, look at that, and reduce some of that foreground. Okay. I know, look at that face. It looks like a little old man, he don't. Okay. Alrighty, so I'm actually just zooming in here and having a look at the catch lights here in the baby's eyes, and trying to figure out the light source. Looks like natural light. Yeah, it is very soft, this light. You can see that it's coming in from quite a high perspective. I probably would have rotated that baby just a bit more towards that light. In terms of the posing bag, and come probably a little bit closer. It just looks a little too soft, a little too even. You could add a little bit more contrast there with the light. In terms of the wrap, I mean, he looks like he's ready to party. He's wide awake and wrapping an awake baby. And he does look like he's a decent size. Like, I mean, I'm just guessing, but bigger awake babies can be tricky to wrap because they can often be quite strong. So he looks like he is wide awake there, and even though he does look quite comfortable and relaxed, he's the wrapping itself could have possibly been handled a little better to keep him a little tighter and a little bit more curled up. So with those hands down, I like to get those hands up to the chest as much as I possibly can, so as I pull that wrap across, it helps keep their arms in place. So something to consider there. The styling is lovely. Obviously babies, you can't tell them what to do, so trying to get that hand around a teddy bear on an awake baby is not going to be easy. But just when you can't see all of the fingers, they do become quite distracting. So possibly trying to wrap an awake baby and removing the visibility of their hands and their feet will also benefit this, because there's so much going on down here in terms of, you know, the arms and the legs and the knot and the wrap and the teddy bear, that we're losing the little face a little bit there. And it is so sweet, and trying to get that focus or them to focus on the camera can be hard too, because they often look towards, you know, high contrasting objects like really dark things or really bright things. You often see babies drawn towards the light. So what I like to do with my camera is, so if this is my baby, I come in really close with my camera because it's very dark and heavy looking and black. and I wait for them to look at the camera, and then I move back, focus, get the shot. So I'll often kind of do it that way. Positioning the baby's head as well, you can see that he's sort of turning his head that way, just adding a little bit more support will help sort of pull that chin up. Well, I'll remove those red lines. So just adding some support underneath the top of the baby's head here will elevate it, and it will reduce that those darker shadows under the neck there as well. Composition wise, the crop is great. I think you've done really well there, and the styling is, it's been handled really well.
Last image.
Oh, alrighty. And this baby's face is so pretty. I keep looking at those cheeks, absolutely gorgeous. We've got one hand kind of up around the head, and it's looking very gentle and relaxed, so it's nice. And then we've sort of got half a hand poking through here. And I know it can be tricky to get those hands just right, but sort of as that hand's kind of placed there, get your shot, and then try to bring those fingers out and have them sort of sitting there, and it'll just place the hands beautifully around the face, and you'll see both hands as opposed to one and a half. I can see that the light coming in here is just a little bit low because it's lighting the fur, not so much the face. The light is lovely and soft on the face, but the fur is brighter. So you want to reduce that by lifting that light a little more. And then what will happen is the hair, you'll get more detail in the hair, because the hair is really quite dark in here. Because as we zoom out, you can see, let me get rid of that line. Let's bring up our curves as well. Okay, so you can see there's a lot of information in this file that's in those darker sort of shadowy areas, and that's going to be around the floor here. You can see obviously here where it's going, and then as I move around, you can see it's quite brighter there. The skin is darker obviously than the baby's face. The wrap is quite bright, and the little headband is quite bright. Then over here, the hair, we're starting to lose a lot of detail, and you can see it's hitting the end of my histogram in that hair. So if you're going to print this for a client, it's going to print a very dark, heavy black blob where the hair should be. So lifting that light, directing it down more towards the baby's face as opposed to coming in more from the side, will help add some light over here. And when you are working with darker backgrounds in terms of styling, and then using lighter tones in the image, it can sort of look a little distracting in terms of that tone. You really want your colours to flow through. So you could have used a slightly darker wrap here to match with the floor, or not had the floor so dark and contrasty in the background there. In terms of placement, I probably would have had the baby a little bit more upright in the frame with something like this, and a little bit more sort of into the center there. It just looks like it's kind of falling off to the side, but I think that you've done a great job there with the wrapping, just bringing that finger out. And when we use brighter colored headbands in really dark hair, they can become distracting and not really add to the image, because I'm looking at that straight away before I come down to that baby's beautiful face. So yeah, over here in the background we've just lost the detail because it's so dark. Careful of that. The placement of your light will impact that, so it might just be too close, your light. You might need to move it further away and turn it up a little bit to spread some more light into that. And when you're working with dark hair, bringing in a reflector and filling some of those shadows will really help and benefit as well. Skin tones look great in the baby's face. The hands are just a little bit cooler. But yeah, that's about it. I think we're done.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Nice.
A few people stayed with us.
Yes. 41 at the end. That's
Fantastic.
not bad.
Thanks, everyone. Some really great images shared. Obviously, I'm sort of trying to get through them as quickly as I can and give you as much feedback as I possibly can. If you didn't get a photo submitted, I'd hope that you got a lot out of that. Sometimes I struggle to find the right words to explain things, but I hope that you understood what I was talking about most of the time.
There's lots of comments in there that I didn't mention, that people are just grateful for the free education, because these are like free mini workshops that they're receiving.
Yeah.
And just the way that you're being able to explain the different things in the images, I think are just brilliant. They're helping people a lot. So.
Oh, excellent. I love doing this. I love being able to give back to the community. And this is what this group is all about. It's about, seeing each other improve. It's about growing. It's about evolving. It's about perfecting our craft. And that's my main goal. When it comes to education, I love being a photographer. I love photographing my clients. I love photographing for me. But what I love even more is seeing other photographers achieve their goals and becoming successful within their business. And it's not just about taking pretty pictures. There's so many other things. So, I know not everybody, has the aspirations to go out and run a full-time studio photographing all the time and it being their full-time job. But, for me, when I teach, I'm hoping that the knowledge and the experience that I can share will help get you to where you want to go in terms of your goals and what you do want to achieve within your business and your craft. That's what it's all about. And you know what? We are always learning. We're always evolving. I create tutorials to be able to share that information with you, and then being able to come in here and do this and I do it for free. It's because I love it so much. I love being able to share and encourage other photographers to do it. So, some of you may have been watching and may not have agreed with what I said about some of the images. That's okay. What we have to remember as photographers is that when we pick up a camera, we're all going to see whatever it is we're looking at and capturing differently, and that's okay. You have your own set of eyes to see what it is that you want to create. We've all got different styles. We've all got different ways of doing things, and that's okay. There are a lot of technical elements to photography that are important to learn in terms of your lighting, in terms of your, your camera skills and getting it right, your composition rules and things like that. But when it comes to, creating beautiful photographs that are going to go on client walls, when we focus on education, when we focus on improving with every shoot that we do, it's only going to benefit our clients. And at the end of the day, they're the only people that we need to be impressing, not the Facebook community, not the other photographers in our industry. It's your clients and loving what you do and what you create, which is really, really important. So yeah, I'm going to go do some work. It's Friday. It's now 11 a.m. And thank you again to everyone that submitted photos. It's not easy putting your work out there to be critiqued. I really do appreciate it. And you're not just doing it for yourselves, but you're allowing other people to watch this process to also learn from if you did submit a photo. So thank you. I really appreciate that. But yeah, no more questions?
No, lots of people saying thank you though, and that you're beautiful.
Aww. You've made my day. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. And keep an eye out on your emails, because you will notice that you get 3 emails from me if you're on my email subscription. You get 3 emails from me every week. You get one on a Monday, one on a Wednesday, and one on a Friday. So those emails are how I share more information with you, because I know that not everything on Facebook is often easily seen, and we can miss stuff all the time. But the email that comes out on a Friday is always going to be like a little bit of a motivational tip from me. You'll see the email on Wednesday will have a blog link to some really great information that we're sharing for photographers as well, more free content on my blog. So if you ever run out of TV shows to watch on Netflix and feel like a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, jump onto the blog. There are a million different topics and articles that we've put on there for you guys to learn from or be inspired by. So that's going to come out, and then on Monday we usually share something that, you know, we've got on sale over at Newborn Posing. There's always lots of sales going on there too. So have a great weekend, and don't work too hard. I know I won't be. Bye.